Well, hi everyone again. The thing just decided to end by itself. Like I told you, the devil is a liar. You guys will get all the juice that I have for today. It doesn't matter what he wants to do. Even if we have to record it every 5 minutes, we will. And we'll actually get to the end of it. I can't believe we've actually spent almost an hour just trying to figure out Facebook and its streaming stuff. Um, but anyway, Josephine, I'm glad you're back. Show, I'm glad you're back. Good. It's well. I know the devil is messing with us. It's working perfectly now. Like I can see guys' comment, I can see myself. So that works great. Man, yeah. Okay, where did I stop? I stopped at choosing a career. So that was the biggest deal for me, and everyone kept saying, "Oh man, you have to be a nurse. You have to be a nurse. They make so much money." I said, "But I really want to be a lawyer. I really want to be a news broadcaster, like a journalist." They said, "Oh, after your nursing degree, you can do another one, and you can just have something on top of that, and then you can make money." Somebody said, "Who would even hire you with an African accent being a lawyer here?" Man, that's the worst thing anyone had ever told me when it comes to choosing a career. There are lawyers now that they have the thickest African accent ever, and they're blooming as a lawyer. So I wish I'd go with that dream, but obviously I did not. But thankfully I did not actually, because God definitely had other stuff down the line waiting ahead for me. So I ended up doing nursing. I definitely did. I did well in nursing school, but by the time I got out of nursing school a few years into it, I figured out that no, this is not something I want to see myself doing for forever. There's something else down the line. It's somewhere in between there. I found grace. I know that I realized that um, God isn't wanting me to be perfect. Um, it wants me to just believe that I am His daughter. It wants me to believe in Him, and then whatever it is I do, as long as I believe in Him, right? And I confess Him as my son, and I confess Him as my God, that I am safe, and I do not have to chase after that perfection every day. So I just stuck with that. So I started. I remember going on a mission trip to Ethiopia, and I got back and I had extensions in my hair. I had I had earrings on. I was not wearing earrings at all. I was able to get past the trousers part, but I wasn't wearing earrings or I wasn't doing anything with my hair, or no extensions in my hair at all. By the time I go back, my father was looking at me like, "Aren't you supposed to go and be more Jesus see or Christian and come back?" But anyway, so that was I have to tell you guys that story because that was the beginning of something different for me. That core part of my life changed my marriage and changed my marriage story, even though I wasn't married then. But that core part of my story change everything else. So that now leads me to the three things I struggled with in marriage. I remember whenever I started dating my husband, it was hard and it was different. I That was the first person aside from when I was 15. I dated this guy for 2 weeks. But that was the only person I'd ever dated seriously in my entire life. That was the first time I was going to be open and vulnerable to somebody else. And that was the first time I would actually let somebody else do the leading for me. I've always done the leading. The first of four, and after I failed out of one, like the two that I hated maths, and I just didn't even know how to work my way around it. So my first at SS2, in my senior year in college, or second to last senior year in college, I failed out of that class because of math, and I had to transfer to another school. Oh man, and I was already a prefect in that school, and you know what it means, especially in a Nigerian setting, being a prefect and then having to repeat that same class. So I remember crying really. That's the first time I've probably ever considered hurting myself because it was really, really hurtful. So I ended up changing school to another school. And by the time I got to that school, man, it was do or die affair. My mom hired me a math teacher. I was whooping math in the butt. I was doing all I could. I got really, really good at every other thing. That was where my study habit and everything kicked up. So by the time I finally got to the SS3 in that school, I became the head girl, being a hard student and being the head girl. So I'd always led my entire life. Even I remember being in university and I would teach tutorial session about classes and things like that. even to people that were way older than I was. By the time I was in University of Lorraine, yeah, I was there for a year and a half. I was probably 15, 16. Yeah, 15, no, no, 16, yeah, 16, 17-ish. So I was still pretty young compared to other people that were there. But I was leading tutorial classes and all those things. Um, so I'd always learned my entire life. And with my dad, I have two brothers, and of course, I have my dad. I always know how to handle them. There was no way around it. I have them wrapped around my fingertips. So I would say I always tell people I have a better relationship with men and with guys than I have with boys, than I have with girls. Even when I got into and that hurt my marriage as well. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. Um since I really feel like we just actually started the conference right now. So if you're just logging in, you're officially the only thing you missed is the technical part of it and then the prayers. That's all you miss because this is actually just starting. That hurt my marriage in a way, but I'll tell you about it in a little bit. So by the time I led my entire life. So by the time I got into this relationship, I did not know how to be myself. I did not know how to be fully me. Because in my parents' marriage, I saw a different version of marriage. I knew I wanted more of that in my marriage, but I did not know how to go about it. I didn't see another kind of marriage being modeled for me. Since I told you guys earlier, my mom, my dad is a pastor, so I would hear him do counseling for marriages, and you hear tips and bits of what's going on in other people's marriages bad. And it's something that would ever happen in my parents' family or in my parents in my house with my parents. But it was a different kind of vibe in my house. And there are things I vowed to myself. And even though my children are unborn, that I will make sure I am better than this. I'll make sure I do this and that better. That being said, I remember I had a really, really bad disagreement with my then boyfriend, who is not my husband, with my then boyfriend then, and he got to a point. I was like, no, that's it, we're done. Like you're not who I think you are. You're this, you're that. Not like in a very insultive way, but like no, you have a lot more maturity to do. You have a lot more things you have to learn before you go into any kind of relationship. Oh man, that hurts. I remember how I told you I like to do things perfectly. I like to be really good at what I do. I like to be exemplary in what I do. Um, so I ended up. I remember where I was at, and I sat down and I wrote him a letter. And in that letter, I was literally like opening myself up as a book, and I said it was about 2 or 3 pages long, and I remember writing in it, I don't know how to do this. I am winging it. I'm giving it my best shot every day, but I don't know how to do this, and I need you to teach me how to be a girlfriend, how to love you, and how to I don't know. You've it's been in it's been in relationships before, and I told you my longest relationship and the only one I've had before that one. Oh, there was one I had for 24 hours, and that's another story for another day. But that 2 weeks one was the longest I'd ever been. So I didn't really know how to do it. And even if you ask him up until today, he will let you know that that was a changing point for him. That was at that point he decided, okay, this is a person I'll be for the rest of my life because it's teachable. Did you remember that word? Teachable. That is the key to a 21st century marriage. You have to be teachable. You have to be teachable and you have to understand who to get the teaching from. That is the most complicated part of this century and being married in this century. Like I told you earlier, and I'm not sure if it's in this session or the one that was deleted or somewhere in there. I told you that there are 3 things that I will share with you today, and I want you to leave with those 3 things today. Those are the 3 things that changed my marriage, and those are the main 3 things I struggle with. Before I start talking to you guys about those 3 things, I want to tell you what it means to be teachable. So, being teachable is to be vulnerable and open and honest enough with yourself to listen to the right advice and to the right person at the right time. So, right advice, right person at the right time. You know, one thing with social media now, people would go online and see anything about, they would see anything about relationship goals or another person's marriage, and they'll look at it and they'll think, oh, this one's way better than mine. And they'll go back in their own marriage and try to replicate that, or in their own relationship and try to replicate that. And it does not work out that way at all. It doesn't. Because what I always tell people with one young wife, one size does not fit all. Uh, I tell people whenever you read a post from one young wife and it doesn't fit you, or it doesn't fit that phase of your life, move on. There are like 1,000 other posts that you can read on that page. But if that particular one does not fit you, move on. And that's the same thing. And that's the same thing being teachable means. When God gives you that discernment to be able to know, this is, and you're open and vulnerable with yourself to be able to know, this post is talking about communication and it's something I'm dealing with. This is something I would work on. That means being teachable. But if it's something about one far off away thing, I don't know. Maybe how to. I'm trying to think of a good example here. So you see a random post about how a couple, wow, they saved $5 million. I use $5 million a lot because that's my word to mean I'm exaggerating. So they saved $5 million in order to go on this big vacation. Sis, I don't know about you, but I don't have $5 million. So if I'm sitting here trying to figure out how I can get $5 million in order to go on a vacation with my spouse rather than focusing on something else, I know it's realistic and more doable for me and my family. That's a better use of my time than figuring out how to make $5 million in order to go on a vacation. That's a far-fetched story, but that's exact same thing I'm trying to say when it comes to being teachable. Okay, now that you know what that means, I'll tell you about the three things. The first thing was communication. Like I told you, I was really good at what I do, really good at every other thing else. So when I talk, I didn't really, the tone of my voice and the level, the tension in my voice, adds a different layer of interpretation to whatever it is I say, and that makes it hard for me to pass my message across. Who I want you to put it in the comment section. Who else struggles with that? Like whatever it is you say, or you do, even though you mean it or you don't mean it, but the tone of your voice or the expression on your face just literally makes things look like you're not even hold on. Let me see what you guys are saying. Okay, you guys are following. Okay. Um okay, good. I want you guys to put in the comment section. That was one thing I struggled with a whole lot. There are times okay. There are times I'll be trying to say something to my husband and it would even though I mean it, even though I mean it from the bottom of my heart, or I don't mean it rudely, just my facial expression would always give a different meaning, and that passes across wrong. So this is one thing I would always do. After I figured that was something I struggled with, I always remember I had to set up a self alarm and self what's that other word I wrote down? It was self alarm and self awareness of when I get to that point. So now, before when I get to that point of being really upset about something and my voice starts to raise, or I start making like weird faces to show disgust or discontent, all of that is disrespectful. And to another person, to a spouse, that is disrespectful of the highest order. I tell people usually that your relationship that you used to be in, it's not it's different from your marriage. I know that sounds not basic, but let me tell you another point to it. Your marriage is not the continuation of your relationship at all. It is the beginning of a new relationship. And things you can say to your spouse and do to your spouse, facial expressions that you can make. Oh, like I remember my mentor using this as an example. She said, oh, like when they're dating, just normal commenting like, "Oh, you're so stupid," da 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 da. And she said that in marriage one day, and the husband looked at her and like said, no, I'm your husband. You never ever use that word on me again. And she said, I'm stupid. We're stupid. Everybody's stupid. Like I'm just joking about it. So that's exactly what I mean when I say it's a totally different face. It's a totally different. It's not. It's not a little bit of a continuation. It's a totally different relationship that you have to adjust to. Anyway, that brings me back to communication. So what I ended up doing was, one, self-awareness and self-alarm. So I had to set up that self-alarm within me, and also tell people around me, and I also had to have that conversation with him, that if I'm talking to you, even if I'm upset or not upset, and I'm starting to get loud, say something. Say, "Tommy, you're talking loud now." And at that point, that's what it means to be teachable. In this century, maybe I don't know about your parents' marriage, but in my parents' marriage, that's not the kind of communication that literally happened. It's always my dad being the dad, and everybody else listens. But in my marriage, I vowed that I would be a friend and I'll be a partner. I don't want to be under, I don't want to be above. I just want us to, and I will not say equal as well because they're different. I made a post on WONDIVA for a while back, maybe a year or two ago. I said there are times in marriage where I let my husband lead, and there are times, or he leads automatically, and there are times that I lead because I know better at whatever that thing is. And there are times that we both lead and do it together. And that doesn't really work in some marriages because they automatically think the husband lead and they just follow every time, or the wife leads and they obviously just drag their husband along, or 50-50 does not even work. There are times in marriage that it's not 50-50. If you I know some people don't agree with that word or face, but that's what I agree. That's what I agree with, and that's what I stand on. There are times in marriage, like in a whole day, in a whole 24-hour time frame, there are times in marriage that it's 50-50. Another hour it might be 20-80, and another hour it can be 25-75. I don't know if that even adds up to 100, but that's exactly how it works in marriages. If you expect your husband to bring 50 and you bring 50 every time, you're setting a very unrealistic marriage for yourself, and that exactly is what social media is presented to us every day. Whenever we see this perfectly photoshopped picture, we think that's exactly what your marriage is, and that's what you should do, or implement it in your marriage. It doesn't always work out that way. So remember, no 50-50. Sometimes it changes. And there are days that it can be 100-0. But as long as you guys are on the same page, and you know that 100 will level out soon, because another person carrying 100 and the other person carrying 0, that can get really, really stressful. Okay, so let's go back to self-awareness. I stopped at telling people around you if that's something you struggle with, if it's the tone of your voice or the yelling, tell people around you, you know what, this is something I'm working with, and I'm trying to get better. Whenever I make faces that makes you feel da 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 da, make sure you let me know. And I will immediately change it. That is what it means to be teachable. Even when it comes to the level of your voice, being self-aware and set alarms around you. Let people ring that alarm for you. Of course, you don't want to tell your enemy this is what you're working on, because then she might then use it against you. But make sure they're friends that would be nice about letting you know exactly what that thing is. Another thing I wrote a mini ebook about. I've written two mini ebooks before that prayer book I was telling you about. I know you don't get distracted with all the sticky notes. It's like half of my brain right here. I cannot keep everything in here, so I have to use sticky notes for that. But anyway, I wrote two mini ebooks. One is about text messaging, just 25 impactful text message that you can send to your spouse, and we'll start off a good conversation for you guys. The second one is emotional word picture. This is a skill that I have mastered over the years, and if you don't know what that is, I want you to go on the website whenever this is over. Um, whenever this is over and get it. It's a very, very short read. And emotional word picture literally just tells you about. Should I even tell you guys or not? No, we don't have the time. I have two more things to talk to you guys about. But anyway, I told you guys about communication already, and I told you how to be self-aware, and then set the alarm, have vulnerable, open conversation with other people around you, and then fix that. Then the other thing that can fix the communication issue is the emotional word picture, which I want you to go to the website to get. I've written a 25-page book about it. I cannot summarize it in a minute. Um, Another thing is, going back to communication. I'm just looking at my note here. If you're the type that just cries, like you're trying to have a conversation with your spouse, and all you do is you're so emotional about it that you just cry and cry about it, girl. Um, Crying might show your husband that you're sensitive about it. It might show your husband that you mean it. it doesn't carry the point you're trying to make needs to be written down and it needs to be passed across. So the only way that you can get that conversation across or that point across to your husband, because the only point you're trying to send to him is not the fact that you're sensitive about it or you're hurt or anything. You want him to know that you've done something is or he's done something to you and you're hurting and this is exactly what he's done and this is exactly what he needs to do better or even what you need to do better as a person. Write it down. So even if you cry from now to tomorrow, somewhere within there, you remember enough that, okay, even though I'm crying, this is exactly what happened. This is what I'll do better. If there's something you need him to do better, this is exactly what I need you to do better. So rather than just sitting there and crying about stuff, make sure you write your thoughts down and also let him know exactly what it is. So that's another thing that can help out with that. So let's talk about the second thing, sex. So I grew, like I told you guys, I grew up in a very spiritual home. So sex wasn't a discussion I think I've never even had with my parents. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, yeah, never had that kind of conversation. It never comes up in any way, shape, or form. So I was left to figure that part out myself. Like I told you, aside from that 2 weeks relationship I had when I was 14, 15 ish, I've never been in one. So by the time I met my husband, I was just as naive can be, and that reflected a whole lot in our marriage. In this century, social media and everything presents things to you. They make you feel like so here, I had to stop and say this at this one. Abstinence is a personal decision between you and your God. I will not impose that on you, and I will not say don't do it. I'm telling you that that's a personal decision between you and your God, but it's something I encourage because it keeps you focused. It doesn't cloud your judgment of your relationship. It keeps you focused on your relationship, and you can work on other things. Because I'm telling you, sex is not the only thing that holds a marriage together. Even sex alone cannot hold a marriage together. The only thing that holds a marriage together is God and friendship. So if you've not built that friendship and all you do is have sex, trust me, you have 5 million years to have sex in marriage, but it will not fix anything for you totally at all. Even if your husband is like 100% into let's have sex every day, it makes me feel closer to you. There are times you will want something more, and sex will not give you that. So that's why I encourage abstinence. Like I said again, it's a personal relationship between you and your God. Even that's yeah, that's a decision. So by the time I got into marriage, I did not even know I didn't know how to do it. I don't see I don't watch pornography or anything. So by the time we started, it was definitely different, and for the first few months, it was definitely painful. So that made me pull away a whole lot. Um, made me pull away a whole lot, and that reflected in my relationship because I would just rather be at home and not do anything. But it really doesn't work out that way in marriage. In marriage, you have to be intentional about every phase of it, and that includes being better when it comes to sex. I read a book. I read a book about sex that changed my total perception of sex. I cannot summarize all of that for you guys. But I am. If you join the inner court of WONDIVA, which is a mini inner circle that I have, and I send out emails once a week. I've been talking about that in that session. But just to summarize it all, yeah, that's my struggle. The process of getting better is I started reading the book, and what I really got from the end of that book is sex happens right here first. Um, if you're thinking about it right here, and you're when I was reading that book, like just the thought of reading that book and listening to what she's saying about sex alone, literally, I'll feel like, oh man, I'm going home and definitely doing something tonight or today or whatever. That was how excited I got without even anything else around me. So sex starts from here. One of the most important thing I got in it is to understand that whatever level you're in, with sex, compatibility in sex matters a lot, but not everyone is always on that same level. Some people today might want to have sex with the light turned off under a blanket, and the next day you want to bounce off a roof just doing it. That's fine. And but the worst thing, or when it gets really bad, is when one person wants to do it under the blanket with lights turned off every day, and the other person wants to hang off the roof every day. That is when the problems start. And that is where one, if it's a serious problem in your marriage, you need to see a therapist, a sex therapist at least, But if it's something that you think you can work on just by with conversation, I want you to start having that conversation with your spouse. Sit your spouse down and say, this, remember I told you how you have to don't be overly emotional about stuff, just write stuff down. This and this and this is what I think is wrong with our marriage. You can actually start that conversation this way. On a scale of 0 to 10, how healthy is your marriage? Is our sex life? Ask your spouse that. And whatever grade he gives you, figure out what you need to do to get to a 10. Like I said again, one size does not fit all. One size does not fit all at all. If I tell you this is exactly what I did, A, B, C, in order to be better when it comes to sex, that might not even work for you because that might not even be something you're struggling with. But one question that's a conversation starter is to ask your husband that, like, on a scale of 0 to 10, how healthy or how satisfied are you with your sex life? And whatever number he gives you, figure out, ask him, what do we need to do to get to a 10? Okay, that's the summary of that. I could not explain a whole book in 2 minutes either. And that was how I got better as a wife when it comes to sex. I figured out what needed to be done. Another question I remember asking was, aside from what else turns you on that you think I do not know right now? What other part of your body turns you on that I do not know? So I asked him that, and he asked me that, and we had a conversation about it. That's another thing you should do. The very third thing that I struggle with in marriage that I'm now better at is trying to be perfect. I wanted to be a perfect wife. I wanted to be a perfect cook. I wanted to be a perfect person at work. I wanted to be perfect as a sister. I wanted to be perfect as a friend. All that pressure, one way or the other, you feel it in your marriage, your spouse, or your relationship. They feel it. And because they're feeling it, it pushes them aside and it makes you the most important thing in the marriage. Everyone or in the relationship, everyone is super important in that relationship. So you have to be aware. Um, Again, when it comes to comparison and also trying to be perfect, I want you to know that everyone has a part of the shoe that pinches. And even if you figure out what your part of the shoe that pinches is, you have to get to a point where you have to either ask God or seek help. So ask God, God, what do I need to fix this part of the shoe that pinches for me or that itches? And whenever it tells you whatever it is you need to do, or it sends people your way to help you figure out what that is, go ahead, do it, fix it. But the truth is, nobody can guarantee that it will not itch again. Nobody can guarantee that it will not, something will not go wrong again. So go ahead, fix whatever part of the shoe that pinches for you. Um, those are the three things that I struggle with, and I've told you exactly how I made it through. The third one, it's really just about sitting down and having that conversation with your inner self. What are those things that I can do perfectly well? What are those things that I cannot do well? And be contented with that, with those things. Be very, very contented with it. I knew that at some point I could not be a perfect wife and a perfect that person. So I chose what was important to me, which is first of all to have a better relationship with God, to make sure when it comes to that part, I'm as close to perfect as I can, and then I can focus on my marriage. What anything else that does not fall into those first two categories, but now that I have kids, so it's God, my relationship with God, my marriage, and then my kids. I know you notice that I did not say my kids and then my marriage. Yeah, my marriage and then my kids. Of course, if abuse is involved in any point in your relationship, that definitely bumps up your children, right? And then bumps the husband down. But at this point in my life, those are the three top important things in my life. And you remember, did you make a note that I did not say ministry or community? All of that is down, down, down my list. Because if I have those two things, well, I'm working on those three things. Every other thing, it's nothing. It's nothing at all. Because I believe that if I seek first his own kingdom, that sounds very preachy, but that's the truth. If I seek first his kingdom and I have 100% relationship with him that's vulnerable, I'm not perfect. Every other thing would line up and work its way out. And that's really it. I wanted to it's at this point that I would open it up for questions while I go through my list to be sure I've not missed anything. Let's see. Nkechi said she was going to send me questions. So, what questions do you guys have? I'm doing this because I really want to close with this wise word from this wise person. So what questions do you guys have? I'm waiting on Nkechi or somebody to say something. Have a conversation with your inner self to know what are those things you can do perfectly and not perfectly. Yes, you're right. You have to be intentional about growth in every area of your marriage. Yes, that's sex inclusive. Yes, if you're not conscious about the sex part, you might lose some juice, um, or some things that you absolutely have to work on. But you have to work on every area, respectively. Sex alone cannot hold a marriage together. God and friendship can hold a marriage together. Yes, it can. Because there are days you do not need a husband. There are days you just need a friend. There are days you will not need a friend. There are days you need a husband and or a spouse or a partner. That friendship part is the most important thing. And if you're not there yet, even if you're in a relationship and you're starting to feel like something is not right, um, you start to feel like something is not right about your relationship, it's that time you start asking yourself, can I be friends with this person forever? So that's a good question you need to ask yourself. Um, be a friend. I'm just reading the comment section here. I'm waiting on you guys' questions before I close this out. Um, I can actually see it now. I can see your questions. I can see your comments. You can post your questions here. Okay. I'm gonna need to like give this before I close this out without questions. Okay, let me go back to reading some of the comments. Being a friend and a partner in marriage, yes, yes. You have to. I remember that point I made about a marriage is not always 100%. You cannot give 100% and the person gives 100%. There are days that it would be like that, like everyone would give their best, like 200 shot. But if you put yourself under that pressure, that it will be 100% every time, you might fall short of that expectation. And because your husband or spouse is not meeting up with that expectation, then you start feeling like they're not giving it their best shot. Um, Sometimes it's 20/80. Um, but whenever it's 20/80, be sure to have conversations about how do we need to get back to 50/50? How do we need to get back to 100 each? Um, there was a post I made recently, and I said, when the marriage journey is a rough patch, it can be rough and it can be smooth, but it's a long journey. Whenever you're on a lap that is good and smooth and nice, make sure you stop and ask each other that whenever the road gets rough, what are the things that we can do to help each other be better? What are the things we can do to help each other feel more comfortable? So that's when you have to conversations about whenever I get upset, or if I get upset about this, or if I say this, or if I do that, what do you want me to? This is what I want your response to be in order for me to feel good about what's going on. Um, this and that whenever I am this and that. Say this and that whenever I am this and that and that. Those are the times to have that conversation, because when it actually happens, saying going back and forth would not help anything. But whenever things are going smooth and a nice day in bed, maybe after sex or before sex, that's always a good time for conversations. Um, make sure you say that these are the things, when I get upset about this, or whenever I do this, or when this happens, I want you to say it this way. If you say it this way, I feel this way. But if you say it that way, I'll feel this way. So those are good times to have conversations like that. One question is, what should singles have in mind prior to marriage? Oh man. So um here, I'm just writing it down so I can. Okay, that is a very good question. Let me go back to your name. That is a good question, Christina. I like I just told you guys. When I was about getting married, or when I was still single, I wish I'd prepared enough for marriage. I wish I had done so many things that, even though I didn't do, I'm grateful for them now, because I can stand in front of you and tell you things that I think you should do better, and you have better experience than I did. I'll tell you the most important thing. One, make sure you have your own relationship with God. Make sure you have your own relationship that's not reliant on anybody, or it's not what somebody taught you, that it's your own relationship with God. Um, that's the first one. If you don't have your own relationship with God, when the going gets tough, you will not have a superior power to turn to. All you have is just yourself, and I've gotten to that point before, and that point sucks. You don't want to be there. Another thing that you should have in mind prior to marriage is that it's not a smooth ride. There are days that it will be hard. There are days it will be easy. And there are days, just like I said, there will be 2020. There are days it will be 50-50. There are days you would go month without disagreement. There are days you go every other day with disagreements. It just happens like that. That's life. Um, yeah, I'm just writing what I'm saying down so I do not forget. Another thing that I want you also have in mind before marriage is that if you've not been in a relationship before and you're maybe a virgin, sex will hurt for the first few times. Um, don't stop, don't pull back. Your husband will feel that, and that might make him pull away too. Um, talk to somebody else you can trust that's married, and ask them what they're doing that might help. One thing that helped um, is lubricants. Try lots of lubricants, like lots of lubricants everywhere. Slaughter, smother it everywhere. That reduces the pain also. Read a book about sex and marriage. Don't read now I might have to take that word back, but don't read pastor. I don't know, pastor or and just I'm trying to not give it name, but I'm not wanting you to read a duper spiritual married sex book. I want you to read like a almost a just regular well researched book about marriage that would give you. The lady I'm talking about that wrote the book on sex, her name is Shannon Etheridge. She is a Christian to the core, but she's not like a God will shoot you if you do this kind of Christian. Um, she's not that kind of Christian. So I don't read a book by sex by someone that would say go shoot you if you commit sin. Just read a good Christian book about marriage that will give you a good understanding of what it is. And that thing that I want you to also have in mind, or that another thing I also want you to make sure you do, is to have someone that you'll be accountable to. Um, have someone that you can. I call them the neutral partners, the neutral party, someone that knows you and your spouse well enough that whenever you tell them what's going on, this cannot be a random person. It cannot be someone that's emotionally unstable. It cannot be someone that you know will probably come back and bite you in the back. Or the new trend right now is infidelity. Someone that would go back and then marry your spouse or something. Yeah, I know that sounds crazy, but sure, it happens. Um, someone that you can be open and vulnerable to about what's going on in your marriage, and they can tell you exactly what you need to do. And someone you can pray with about what's going on in your marriage as well. So those are the most important things I want to remember about marriage before getting into it. But most importantly, have your own relationship with God. Do not let it be based off of somebody else. Let me tell you guys a quick story. We probably have about 30 more minutes. So I could have married a guy that was super duper spiritual. Oh my gosh. And since I grew up in my own father's house, so he's super duper spiritual. I felt my mom was always constantly under that pressure of being better. Like, oh, I have to go to Sunday school today because your father said so, or I have to lead this in church because your father said so. I did not want to be that. I did not want to have to wake up in my marriage every day and feel like I have to show my spouse that I'm a Christian. I wanted a regular guy. I'm not a regular guy, but a Christian guy, but one that would not have to chase after me because I did not memorize a memory verse from the Bible. I did not want that kind of guy. And that's exactly what God gave me. So if you have your own kind of relationships, you will not need that kind of person either. I hope that answered your question, Christina. Another question is, How does someone who find it hard to take to corrections become teachable? Oh, you have to decide to have a open, honest conversation with yourself. Um, get a plain paper, make a worksheet for yourself, and divide it into three. So get a plain paper, divide it into three. Make the first one, what am I scared of? Here, let me go back to this page so I know. Um, so I can tell you exactly. I feel like I did something similar, but for something else. So this is how I wrote it down. Um, what is it that you like to be better at? So what are those things that you would want to be teachable at? So write it on one line. What is your fear about it? Like, what are you scared of about the most about getting to that point? Then write it down yourself. How can I transform what that fear is into being teachable? That's it. That's exactly what you need to do. So first line, right? Like what are those things I would like to do? What are those things I would like to be better at? And then the second column would be what is my fear? And the third column would be how can I transform this fear into where I need to get to? This that question you asked me, it's a very broad question, and I would need a full, maybe if you get particular to one thing, I can help you do just what I just told you. I can help you reflect on that and figure out what you need to do about one particular thing. But you yourself might have to go back down that line and do that same thing for every other thing that you're thinking you need to be teachable with or about. But remember, I told you that before even doing this, you have to have that open, honest, vulnerable conversation with yourself. That conversation with yourself is what would help you write down those things that you think you need to improve on. I had to get to that point. Remember that letter I told you I wrote to my husband? I had to get to that point. I had to get to the point of knowing, oh, Tommy, you're terrible at doing this. You're terrible at doing this. You have to be better. So I told him, I don't know how to be a girlfriend. I have no idea. I have no clue. I need you to help me. But what are those things that you can teach me in order to be better? One thing I wish I did was read books, but I didn't. But for you, I don't know if you're married or single. That's why I said that question is broad. I'll need to ask you more questions and help you dig deeper in order for me to answer that question. Skill. That's exactly what I need you to do. If you forgot what I said, I'll restate it again. So, right, one column you write down things that you like to be teachable with, or things that you like to do, or where you like to go. Not where you like to go as in places, but from here to help you get from here to there. What exactly is your there? Where are you trying to get to? And write those things down. Write down your fear, and how can you transform those fear into where you need to get to. Let me give you an example. So if you like to become teachable when it comes to communication, like I indicated, you can write down so where would you like to get to? So be very specific with yourself. I would like to be able to talk without, I don't know, what's that word? I'm looking for that word. What do you do with your face whenever you're whenever you're mad about something without rolling my eyes? Yeah, that's the word. I just went back. I like to be able to talk to my husband without rolling my eyes. Then you can say, what's your greatest fear about doing that? That you thinking if you stop rolling your eyes, you will not understand the fact that you're mad about it or you're disgusted about it. You write that down. Then how can you transform that fear? You can also break that down by saying, okay, so rather than rolling my eyes, what is another thing I can do rather than rolling my eyes? Rather than rolling your eyes, maybe you have to say something. Say, okay, right now, other than rolling my eyes, I'm going to keep my eyes closed and say this to you. I am that, 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 that. I know that sounds very simple, but those are little tips and tricks that would help him know that this girl is trying her best to be better and be teachable. He can literally close his eyes and say, I am trying my best. The next thing I really want to do is to roll my eyes, but I will not roll my eyes. I'll keep my eyes closed and tell you this so you understand how mad I am. Conversation, communication, it goes a long way in marriage. And those little tips and tricks that can help out. I hope that answers your question, Shewa. Um, Let me see. I think you can just send me some more questions. If your spouse always shy away from communication to make the marriage better, what do you do? Hmm, that's a good question. If your spouse shies away from having conversations, what do you do? Um, you cannot you cannot I cannot overemphasize the power in writing your thoughts down. Some people are writing people, some people are not, some people are speaking people. If if it's your spouse that shies away from it, how about you write it down, right? So if what is shy of talking about is let's see. I don't know. I'll just use a very weird example. Carrying the trash out. So if he doesn't want to talk about that, get you a sticky note or a paper and write it down and say, I feel like you're not wanting to talk about taking the trash out. Can we talk about it at this certain time, at this certain dates, during this certain time? Or you can create the space for it. Tell him, baby, after you get back from work today, I'm going to make sure we all the kids are in bed at such time. I'm going to make sure this is done and that is done. Your food is already ready. Your food is ready at home. Um, before you sleep at 9 o'clock, let's talk about taking the trash out. Like it might be, oh, you know what, babe? I've been thinking about something. I know you're not wanting to talk about it, but I think a good time to talk about it would be on our way back from so. The best thing is to set a time and a date for anything. Successful people, they don't have random conversation at a random time. They're intentional about it. So you have to be intentional about you have to focus on it. I was telling my team recently, I said you have to have the focus of a landing eagle. You know when an eagle is soaring and it's about landing and that's a peak, I don't know, get a fish or something to eat from the floor. It's not, do you think it's trying to get a fish from the floor and looking here and there? No, it's super duper focused on that fish and like it's said I get this fish and die. So whenever you have a partner that's not wanting to have conversation, write those things down and take it one at a time. If it's taking trash out, putting your shoe on the floor, I don't know whatever the issue is. Write it down one by one and tackle it one a week. But remember though, you don't want to be that wife that would always pick out what's wrong with the spouse every time. You want to be able to give some compliments, which is that's another session for another time. I'm sorry, I have a little bit of cough. So write it down and do what I just told you. Do it for each one at a time. You can pick one a month or one every other month. Know that you cannot force your spouse to change anything. You can only influence them. That's it. You cannot. You cannot force your spouse to change anything. You can only influence them. And you can help them, you can help influence them by actually having a conversation about it. And if they don't want to have a conversation about it, set a time and date that they will not be able to run away from. If you don't meet up with the time and date for today, say, oh, babe, I know we could not talk have that conversation yesterday. Tomorrow will be another time. That's if you have to be focused on it. If you're not focused on it, and you're not focused on it like, oh, you did this wrong, so you have to fix it. No, before you have that conversation, you've already written down your stuff. Oh, this is what I need to do. This is what I would feel. This is what it will make me feel whenever you do it. So write it down and then set a time and date for that conversation. That would help. I hope that answered that question. Um, hold on a second. I'm trying to ask in case there's any more question. If you have a spouse who is not teachable and try to make the marriage work better, um, if you have a spouse who is not teachable, or what do you do? I think I answered that question already. How did you find it? If you find a spouse who is not teachable and you try to make the marriage work better, what do you do? Did I answer? Think I answered that question already. Maybe it's the same, but I guess I'll just recap. If you have a spouse who is not teachable, you have to be focused. You cannot force them to do anything. You cannot. You cannot force them to do anything. You have to. You focus on whatever that issue is. Don't focus on it as a nagging. That's a totally different ball game. Focus on it as in one little bit of it at a time. Set a time and date and talk to them about it and tell them exactly how it will make you feel. if they work on those things for you. You have to have that conversation. Tell them how it would make you feel if they work on those things for you and for your marriage as a whole. But I really want to give you guys this thing though. You know that everyone, um even you have a little bit, you have fragments of your parents' marriage in you. So I want you to think about that. You have fragments of your parents' marriage in you. If you're married right now, or if you're in a relationship, if you're if you run your relationship like your father or your mom did theirs, what do you think the result of your marriage would be? Who do you think you will end up becoming? Let me back up a little bit. I want you to put yourself in your husband's shoe or your spouse's shoe. If you had grown up in a house under that father and that mother, what do you think your life would be like? So there are three things. There are three ways that everyone reacts to that thing. So one is we either rebel against our parents' kind of marriage. You're like, absolutely not. I am not going to be my dad. I am not going to be my mom. So everything they do is like totally opposite of what their parent did. So if their parents are like super duper strict, they will be super duper loose with their kids. They're like, oh, you want to go fly inside the swimming pool? Go fly. Because their parents will probably be like, no, you're not doing that. So that's number one. It's either you rebel against their own parenting or their own marriage style. Or the second thing is you do exactly what they did because you think that's the best way to do it. So you just do it. And again, that can be positive or negative, right? And the third thing is just not even caring. Yeah. It's either you do the opposite, you do it for, or you don't even care at all. So whenever you have a spouse who is not teachable, put yourself in his shoe. What Ask him, what is your marriage? What is your parents' marriage like? Um, and try to understand it as well. Because if you have a good understanding of his parents' marriage and how it worked in their marriage, was the father a good listener? Um, was the mother a good talker? Does she stand up and speak her truth? Um, if none of that happens, or the father, let me back up a little bit. Does the father actually have conversation with the mom about things going on at home? And whenever the father or the father does something wrong, how does the mom approaches the father? Those are the things that he has seen growing up for 30, 20 something years. And you were thinking you would enter his life and change all of that. You cannot. He would either do it the opposite of what his father did, or he would do it exactly like his father did, or not even care. So it's not left for you to influence that. You can do little things like we've talked about, all those practical tips that I've talked about in this meeting. All those practical tips, if you work on it one after the other, you might be able to influence him in order to start doing things differently. But you cannot force him to do things differently. You cannot force him to listen to you. You know one secret? I know it might sound cliche, but you can force him to listen to you in prayers. Seriously. You can go to God and soak that entire conversation in like I don't know how to describe it. Soak that conversation in prayer. By the time he enters into it, it's entering into a conversation with God, not even you at that point, because God has gone ahead of you to change his heart about it. And if you're a spouse, if you're a wife, you know what I'm saying. If you've ever tried that, so that works. That can force anyone to change. But the most practical part is to know that you cannot force him to do any of that. You cannot force him to be teachable. You can help him to be teachable, which is adopting all those little skills that we've talked about here. Well, that's the end of all the questions according to Gechi and according to what I'm seeing here. So I wanted to close us out with this poem, and it goes like this. It's called The Life and the Each. So each as in you're eaching your skin, right? Life and the Each. Are you guys still here? It goes like this. Just when you think you have it all sorted out, then one thing happens. I guess that's what life is. You can never have it all for too long. There's always a part that itches, not necessarily a part that hurts, just a part that itches. One needs to learn when it's absolutely necessary to itch and when it's absolutely necessary to itch lightly. Most importantly, you have to know when it's absolutely necessary to apply some cream, some cream to help make the itching stop. Because itching for a while, guess what? It would itch again. I want you to know that your marriage is savable, your relationship it's savable. You do not have to resign to a life of misery or a marriage filled with misery. It's savable. You just have to know when to each lightly, when to apply cream, and there are times you have to know when to run to someone that can pour cream on it, somebody that can pour something to save it, to keep it from literally hurting you. Um, I would also close out with this story. Last night, halfway through yesterday, I drink lots of water. So I drink out of these big mason jars. I don't know if you've seen them. What they're really big mason jars. Um, just one cup of water is never enough for me. So I have to drink from those big ones. And when it comes to glass and me, we don't have a good relationship. So I knew that at some point, one day, that thing would fall and break. So yesterday I was trying to mix, since I have a little bit of cold, I was trying to mix cold and warm water. Um, and as soon as I took the warm, I was about grabbing my mason jar out of the water dispenser. My fingers brushed the tip of the water dispenser, and the hot water poured on my hand. And I removed my hand immediately, and then the mason jar fell on the floor, and there's glass and water everywhere. My son was super scared, and I swept that floor three times to make sure there are no pieces on the floor. And again, because I have two small babies, right? And that maybe happened around 3, 4 o'clock. Then about 10 o'clock last night, we slept really late last night. I was changing my son, my oldest son, in just somewhere around that area. And as soon as I put him down from his changing table, he started saying, "Ouchie, ouchie." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, he had stepped on a glass." So I picked up his food and I went through every part of it to make sure, you know how there's a glass embedded in your skin, you can feel it by running your hands through it. I did all of that over and over again, and it just kept saying "ouchie." I'll put him down, and it will still pick up that leg in a weird way and say "ouchie." But when I set him down and I started literally rubbing every palm, the sole of his feet, and it would not cry or it would not be sensitive to any area of it. Anyway, so finally I took him to bed, gave him a good bath, scrubbed that part, but still in his head, it's still ouchy and he will not put his foot down. So in my mind, I was thinking by the time he wakes up this morning, he would probably forget and he would put his foot down. And guess what? He did. Throughout the rest of the night yesterday before he finally slept, he was saying ouchy even though the glass was gone out of his skin. This morning he woke up and he did not even feel the ouchie. He did not even remember there's an ouchie. I want you to know that in your marriage or in your relationship, the ouchie you're feeling right now, tomorrow it will not be there. It might not be there. So get your mind out of the ouchie. Get your mind out of what part that hurts. In every marriage, there's a flickering um what's in every marriage there's a flickering well, I cannot say that word right. There's a light sparkling somewhere, a tiny light sparkling somewhere. If you focus long enough on that flickering light, it would flood the entire room. But if you focus on those negative things, the dark spots in your marriage every time, it would get darker. So your ouchie might be ouchie today. That was me like years ago in the beginning of my marriage, thinking I actually had a plan to run away from the ouchie sincerely. But now it's no longer ouchie because my mind, maybe those ouchie might still be there, but my mind is not even on it. It's a whole lot better now. I pray the same. I pray the same over your life. And as we put this to a hand, I pray the same over every part of your life, that whatever part that hurts, whatever part that itches, whatever part that you're so focused on that probably does not even hurt anymore, but because you're focused on it, it still feels like it hurts or it itches. I pray peace over you. I pray peace over your home. I pray peace over your career. I pray peace over your family, your children. I pray peace over your future. And I pray that God will speak peace into your mind, and He will let you know that you are in the palm of His hands, that nothing hurts that He doesn't know about. And at the right time, perfect time, He will take it off and He will take your mind off of it. But God, I pray that you also help them take their mind off of it, God. I pray that you let them know that you are supreme, that you reign over all things. You have everything right on the palm of your hands. You know the beginning from the end. So, God, I pray that whatever part hurts, that you take care of it according to your own timing, God. God, I pray for everything I've talked about today. I pray that you let it stick and you help them to practice. Not even all of it, just one thing. Just one thing, God. One thing that it can take away from here, knowing that they can do something better in their marriage, knowing that they cannot force their partner to be better, but they can help influence their partner to be better. Help them be teachable, God. Help them have open, honest conversation with themselves first. Help them set up that self-alert and self-awareness so that they can get to a point where they can just go around in that confidence of Esther, knowing I'm going to go in there, I'll do exactly what I need to do. If I perish, I perish, and I'll leave the consequences to God. God, I pray that you help them speak up and stand up in the relationship, and you help them leave the consequences to you. God, I pray that you, above all, protect them in this season, in this pandemic. God, I pray for protection over the entire family. You said 1,000 will fall at our sides and 10,000 at our right side, where it will not come near us. God, I speak that over their family, that your angels will keep guard around them and my family too. Thank you, God, for just getting, even though the enemy tried to take all this juice from us in the beginning. So thank you, God, for just this amazing chance to speak life over these people. Thank you for the salt. Thank you for the salt that's been sprinkled. I pray that it I pray that it keeps this marriage just tasty for you and tasty enough for them to want more of you. I pray that it goes deep into their marriages and bears root, and I pray that it flourishes. I also pray overall that you help them find what their salt is so that they can sprinkle it in other people's life. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Bye, people. I've totally enjoyed my session with you guys. I'm sorry about the first few hours or the first few minutes. I hope you have a great day. You guys have an amazing leader. Nkechi is amazing. She's not only amazing, she's intentional. She, you will not, I will tell you this, you will not offer Nkechi $1 million to leave you guys alone. Maybe to do someone else's job. She will not take it. I just have to tell you guys that because she's so invested in you guys and God has given her wisdom. She's just an amazing leader. Wisdom and the way she does things amazes me as well. So I wish you guys all the very best and have a great day. Please stay safe. Coronavirus is still everywhere. So just stay safe. I love you and have a great day.